Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're setting the DeLorean back about 400 years and plunging straight into one of the most fascinating, tumultuous, and utterly contradictory eras in European history: Paris in the 1600s. Forget the glittering palaces and romanticized notions for a moment, because 17th century Paris was a city of stark extremes, a place where genius mixed with absolute filth, where political power was consolidated in breathtaking ways, and where the seeds of the Enlightenment were first sown, often right alongside the guillotine. We're going to spend the next 10 minutes walking the cobblestone streets of this incredible city, exploring everything from the soaring ambition of the Bourbon monarchs to the daily grind of the common Parisian. We'll look at the figures who shaped France forever: the son, King Louis XIV, of course, but also the formidable minds and personalities like Cardinal Richelieu, and the legendary playwright. So grab your powdered wig, try not to step in the sewage, and let's dive into the Paris of the Grand Siècle. The 17th century, or the 1600s, is often called the Grand Siècle, the Great Century, in France. But to truly understand Paris, we have to start with power. When the century began, France was still reeling from the devastating wars of religion. King Henry IV, the first Bourbon monarch, had finally brought a measure of stability with the Edict of Nantes, offering rights to Protestants. But Paris was still fragmented, a chaotic medieval city struggling to modernize. Henry IV focused on public works. He completed the Pont Neuf, the new bridge, which is, ironically, the oldest standing bridge in Paris today. He started to clean up some of the squalor, but his assassination in 1610 threw the monarchy back into turmoil, leaving his young son, Louis XIII, to inherit the throne. And this is where the real drama begins, because behind the young king stood a man who would single-handedly transform France from a decentralized feudal state into the absolute monarchy we usually associate with the 17th century Cardinal Richelieu. Richelieu wasn't just a political operator. He was a brilliant, ruthless statesman from the 1620s until his death. In 1642, he pursued two primary goals. First, to make the king's authority absolute within France, crushing the power of the high nobility and eliminating the political and military independence of the Huguenots, or Protestants. Second, he aimed to establish French dominance in Europe, primarily by countering the massive power of the Habsburg dynasty that controlled Spain and the Holy Roman Empire. Imagine the atmosphere in Paris under Richelieu. If you were a noble, life was tense. If you plotted against the king, Richelieu would find out, and even of high-ranking aristocrats became commonplace. Richelieu built up a huge network of spies and informants. He established the intendants, royal officials sent out to administer the province, bypassing the old feudal structures. This consolidation of power was crucial, and it laid the foundation for the next towering figure, Louis XIV. When Louis XIII and Richelieu both died in the early 1640s, Louis XIV was just a child. His mother, Anne of Austria, ruled as regent, relying on Cardinal Mazarin, Richelieu's protege. But the Parisian nobility, feeling oppressed by decades of Richelieu's centralized power, seized this moment of weakness. This led to the Fronde, a series of civil wars that erupted between 1648 and 1653. The Fronde was a chaotic blend of noble rebellion, parliamentary opposition, and popular unrest, fueled by high taxes and the failures of the state. It was a terrifying time for the young Louis XIV. He was literally chased out of Paris multiple times. He witnessed firsthand the fickleness of the Parisian crowds and the inherent danger of a powerful capital city. This trauma profoundly shaped Louis XIV's reign. When he finally took control in 1661, after Mazarin's death, Louis vowed that Paris would never again threaten the monarchy. And this brings us to perhaps the most significant change of the era: the move to Versailles. While Louis XIV loved Paris, he commissioned major architectural projects like the Hôtel des Invalides, and modernized the police force. He actively stripped the city of its political heart by moving the court and the central government to the newly built Palace of Versailles, about 12 miles outside the city. Louis managed to keep the dangerous high nobility under his direct supervision, turning them from regional warlords into glorified courtiers focused on court etiquette rather than revolution. Paris remained the economic, artistic, and demographic center of France. But the Sun King kept his distance, always remembering the chaos of the Fronde. Now, let's turn our attention to daily life in Paris, because despite the political dramas, the city was teeming with activity. By the mid-17th century, Paris was rapidly expanding, swelling to maybe 500,000 inhabitants. It was the largest city in Western Europe, possibly only rivaled by London. But infrastructure had not kept up. Sanitation was non-existent. People threw their waste, both human and animal, directly into the streets. The odors must have been overwhelming. The narrow, winding streets were packed with pedestrians, horse-drawn carts, sedan chairs for the wealthy, and livestock. Mud and refuse were constant companions. If you were walking the streets, you had to watch out for things being tossed out of upper-story windows. Crime was rampant, especially at night, as there was virtually no public lighting until the 1660s, when Louis XIV introduced the first widespread system of oil lamps. Before that, once the sun set, the city was a maze of shadows, ideal for thieves and cutthroats. The social structure was rigidly defined. At the top were the powerful clergy and the nobles. Leben in Grandduché, tels particuliers, private mansions. Especially in the Marais district, which was the fashionable area before Versailles took over. Below them were the wealthy bourgeoisie, lawyers, merchants, and financiers. This class was critical, as they loaned money to the perpetually cash-strapped monarchy. And then you had the vast majority: artisans, shopkeepers, laborers, and a huge population of the desperately poor. Life expectancy was low, infant mortality was shocking, and hunger was a constant threat, often leading to bread riots. But this was also the era of unparalleled cultural flourishing. The 17th century saw France establish itself as the artistic and literary capital of Europe. The French language was refined and standardized, largely thanks to institutions like the Académie, founded by Richelieu himself to maintain the purity of the French language. This period gave us some of the greatest minds in drama. We have Jean Racine, famous for his stark, classical tragedies, often dealing with themes of impossible love and duty. And perhaps most importantly, we have Jean-Baptiste Paquelin, better known by his stage name, Molière. Molière ran his own theatre company, performed for the king, and specialized in comedies that satirized the hypocrisy and foolishness of Parisian society. The greedy doctors, the social climbers, the religious fanatics. His plays, like Tartuffe or The Misanthrope, were wildly popular, but also incredibly controversial, often leading to temporary bans because they hit too close to home for powerful people. Molière's ability to capture the essence of the Parisian character in the 1660s gives us a marvelous window into the moral landscape of the time. Architecture, too, reached new heights. While Versailles is the masterpiece, Paris saw the birth of the French classical style. Think of the smooth lines, symmetry, and restrained elegance that characterize buildings like the Louvre's Eastern Facade. Louis XIV's finance minister, Jean-Baptiste, pushed for massive public works and supported French arts and manufacturing. Everything from tapestries to luxury goods to ensured that France's culture reputation matched its political might. In conclusion, the Paris of the 1600s was a study in contrasts. It was a place of extreme squalor and extreme sophistication. It was the training ground where the absolute monarchy was forged in fire, first by Richelieu and Mazarin, and then perfected by Louis XIV. It was a city that the king both feared and adored. While the political heart eventually moved out to Versailles, Paris remained the pulsating, dirty, brilliant soul of France, setting the stage for the century that would follow, the Age of Enlightenment. It's an era that feels impossibly distant, yet the impact of the decisions made by the Bourbons, the cultural innovations of Molière, and the foundations of centralized government that were laid down still resonate today. Thank you so much for traveling back in time with me. Let me know in the comments what period of history you want to explore next. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, please hit that like button and subscribe for more historical journeys. We'll see ya in the next video.